Yo, so I've been thinking, food for thought, entertain my thought for 1 second. By all means, feel free to disagree. You don't have to buy in. That's my disclaimer. But I've been thinking, right? You know how in the 70s, 60s, time immemorial, when a certain group in this country would ever decide to politicize and organize their collective situation, in whatever time frame this might have occurred, there were always provocateurs or agent provocateurs sent to infiltrate that organization, right? To water it down, to dilute it, to confuse and distort the cause of the people involved, in that organization, right? That was the goal, like COINTELPRO and all this. I know you probably heard that term, right? So what I submit to you, and again, feel free to disagree, I think that this country has so thoroughly indoctrinated the minds of some of the people who are offspring of the people who did what they did in certain times to organize. The offspring of those people have been so thoroughly indoctrinated that they have taken up the mantle or the role of agent provocateurs that were sent or on the payroll of whoever, the CIA or FBI. I forget which one is domestic and which one is foreign. I want to say FBI. I think it's the FBI. So outside of being on the payroll, there have been those who have been so thoroughly indoctrinated that they themselves automatically, without payment, have learned to take up that role, to actually be the person to infiltrate for the sake of diluting and watering down and, discrediting and all those negative connotations, all those negative feelings being conjured up because of what's not known. Anything that is unknown, more times than not, is feared. And a people who barely knows themselves, when they are trying to put the pieces together to organize, it strikes fear in those who might have been the reason for them being deceived, who might have been the reason for them not knowing who they are or where they come from, might have been the reason they suffer so much anguish and stress and hurt to the point where they feel as though they need to organize to do better, Of course, that would strike fear in those who are guilty of being the reason why people would need to organize, So that being said, what I believe the system has done, what this government has done over time, is trained the minds of those who are supposedly who come from among the people who are trying to organize, who are trying to better their lot in this country. They have indoctrinated those from among them to naturally be agent provocateurs, or infiltrators, or agents of chaos, or whatever you want to say. And just the illustration, I know I'm like throwing a lot of words out there, and hopefully it's not me talking in circles to your ears. I'm making perfect sense to me, So take that for what you want to take that for. But here's an illustration. Wherever you are, like if you say you have a job, right? Say that the demographic at your job is maybe 75% whoever you come from among, community you're a part of, whatever your flesh indicates you are in this country, there's 75% of that, 25% of other, You are at this job doing what you're supposed to be doing, keeping a good attitude, but there always seems to be an issue with somebody that comes from among that 75%. It's never harmonious, it's never cohesive and a collective effort with the 75%. And 9 times out of 10, the one who's giving you the most hell, that is from among the 75%, congregate, which is nothing wrong with doing, intermingling with other cultures, however you want to chop that up, socializing with other cultures, that is nothing wrong with that. But people of this sort more likely are drawn to those from a different place, which is, again, nothing wrong with that. So if they are not mentally secure, if they are not mentally solid themselves, if they're not okay with the people from whom they spring, they are going to be influenced to take on the ideologies of other cultures who might look on this 75% at this job, as feeble, collectively, or not as intelligent, individually or collectively, or not as put together, not as updated, not as civilized, not as current, whatever the case may be. This person who is from among the 75% at this job you might work at that's always giving you hell, though they look the way you look on the outer, the within is the issue that is making it to where this person is giving you hell for whatever reason. Whatever the protocols, or this person is always watching you and making sure you're doing everything perfectly. Although that person might make a mistake, it's on you to do everything perfectly. Or you're getting written up, you're getting reprimanded, you're getting disciplined, And don't let this person be in a higher position, a position overlooking your position, And this person has this kind of ideology. It's like self-determination says that one has to first have self-pride, not to the point where it becomes self-arrogance or you believe that you're above all, greater than all, grandiose in your ideas, but self-pride, meaning that you love from which you come, you understand from which you come, you're willing to build upon those who come from among you, with those who come from among you, and self-determination also says that what is to be done for self should be done by self, with those who identify with self, So there's nothing wrong with being proud from which you come, but if you are influenced easily by other perspectives that do not value from which you come, therein lies the issue. Therein lies where, your self-determination is compromised, your self-love or being proud of self is compromised, and therefore you go out among those from who you come and proliferate that discomfort with self, that insecurity with self, that lost love for self. Whereas you used to might have saw it one way, now you're adopting another's philosophy and seeing it a different way, and it's almost like you're spreading their gospel among those whom you're supposed to be building with. So it creates much of the same. And I'm saying this to say, we pick and choose where we stand among whomever we stand among, Wherever you find yourself, you have a choice in the person you wish to be in whatever environment you find yourself in. So if you recognize that a situation is at its tipping point, and you can either choose to enter this situation with a understanding attitude, with a considerate attitude, with a patient, real patient attitude, or you can be the person that adds to the chaos, seeing that the tipping point is gonna, all it takes is for one more person to complain about this, or all it's gonna take is for one more person, to, be disagreeable about this, and it's gonna take one more person, and that'll be, if you want to be that kind of person, cool. But my thing is this: don't in turn play victim when you're trying to play the role that was designated for other communities to play, and you step into that role. Don't feel like the victim if those other communities victimize you, because now you feel as though, or they see that you have no backup, no support. You're a lone wolf now. You don't belong to anybody. If you're gonna walk that walk and talk that talk, be ready to face the consequences and repercussions that come with that. That's all I'm saying. Because 9 times out of 10, people who have this type of ideology that I'm explaining to you, who have lost their way, who have lost or were never clear on their identity and were easily influenced to go against those from whom they come, you know, these are people 9 times out of 10 that want to belong to something. And the thing that they want to belong to is something that is established, that is potent, you know, that gets results, that is sufficient or efficient, shall I say. You know, they want to belong to something that is strong, not something that is still in the building process, not something that is weak, you know, in the eyes of many. Weak is a matter of perspective, I guess. That's subjective, you know, but in the eyes of those who are more developed and civilized in this country, you know, who are not, quote unquote, as they would say, nation building, you know, their nation is already established. Their culture is already, you know, defined. You feel me? So those from among us who choose that route, who choose that path, are more than likely people who want to belong to something they might see as great, or they might see as, you know, solid, you know, not knowing that they are the tokens or going to end up, I won't even say the whipping boy because that'll sound like something crazy, but they will end up the scapegoat when everything hits the fan. And what I mean by that is, we live in such a sensitive time. If you're seen as somebody with negative characteristics, I'm just going to throw an example out there. If you're seen as a racist human being, you know, and we can touch into what racism means and the difference between that and prejudice and all this, but if you're let's say a prejudiced person, if you're a prejudiced person, no matter what culture you come from, if that's the stigma placed on you, your opportunities in this country could very well dwindle because of that. Among people, among your business associates or business partners, among those who might want to be romantic with you or was thinking about being romantic with you, because people are being judged in the court of public opinion these days, more so than not. Like, it's all about the consensus of the people that is looking at a situation and trying to understand who a person is, you know? It's like the stigma of being prejudiced, even if it's not true, but the stigma alone could be the reason that something that was supposed to happen doesn't happen, in a positive sense, you know? All this being said, people who choose to disregard their growing or budding culture, their new culture, you know, who refuse to identify or admit that they're a part of a people who are learning to find their way, you are the type of person that doesn't want to have a negative stigma attached to you, right? But the paradox is this: the negative stigma will be attached to you because of you trying to jump ship and join up with those who are prejudiced, but you will be the scapegoat for being prejudiced against, if that makes sense. Like, let me try to paint a picture for you and give you an illustration. What's a good illustration? What's a good... It's almost something... Like... Perfect example. Have you ever seen the movie Life? Have you ever seen the movie Life? The guy that held the gun, that did the overseeing on behalf of the white dude that was holding, like, Martin and Eddie Murphy and everybody, Bernie Mac and everybody, behind state lines, if you will, as they were state property on the chain gang. If they want to get over the line, it'll be the black dude that was going to shoot them if they did that. I think one person did get shot for running over the line. Now, dig this. The person that's holding the gun, you know, is doing that because it's their job. That's what they've been told to do. And the person with the upper hand is the person with the authority. And that in that time period, like what, the 50s, 60s, throughout the country, the certain culture had the authority, the power to say so. They wrote the bills and voted, and the House and the committee, and council and Congress and Democrat and Republican, all that was run by a certain community, a certain culture, right? So people of another culture that was subject to this particular culture, like directly subject to them, like directly the property of this other culture, over time was also subject to this culture by way of laws and the penal system and, police, other ways, just different ways that we were subject over time. These people were subject over time, right? So in this time, which is the microcosm of the microcosm situation I'm explaining to you, the movie Life, the dude with the gun, if you go across the line of shooting, that was his job to do. Like many people these days are just doing their job when they, short you out of your potential progress, or short you out of your potential positiveness in your day. Something as simple as that. They might make you have a negative day because they're just doing their job. We haven't. That's what I'm saying. There are plenty of people in a certain culture who have been trained by this government, this system, to be provocateurs of their own culture. To be agents in their own culture, to be like informed, like feds. Like there are infiltrators. Instead of the FBI having, they still have this too, though. Don't get me wrong. The FBI still pays people to infiltrate but how they've conditioned some of the people from among a certain culture, they'll do it for free. They'll just cause confusion, disturb the peace, disturb the harmony of the village, just because they don't value the people in the village. They don't value themselves coming from among that village. They don't value anything that has to do with that culture, that village, none of that. So just off GP, they just gonna go ahead and, cause havoc. So I'm saying all this to say, the gun line, the guy with the gun, the black man with the black face, you know what I'm saying? Based off the prejudice, which is the reasoning behind the racism in the system in which he lives, he's the one that has the power of life and death over the other men that look like he looks, because he's doing his job. But really, the person who's really shooting, if you really think about it, is the man of the other culture, the white guy, with the, little hat on. And we if you remember the movie, you know what I'm talking about, with the glasses that made, who was it, Martin, stand on the bottles and told Eddie Murphy, if you fall off, you shoot him. They say he gave him the same opportunity, but did he take it? If you know the movie, you know what I'm saying. Life is a good movie too. Check that out. It's a classic. But yeah, so whereas in one situation, that black man that shot the other dude for going over the gun line, he did his job. You ask some people today, they wouldn't be mad at that black dude for doing his job. We expect of each other to be hard workers for somebody else. Like, we expect each other to be hard workers for somebody. So doing your job, you get a pat on the back for that, even if you having to shoot, another person from among your community that looks like you for going over a line. If he's doing his job, you can't get mad at that, right? So, whereas he had the opportunity to do what Eddie Murphy did later in life, to not, shoot, kill, murder one from among him. The other man did. He chose to go ahead and take that job up, take up that manner, and that's all prejudice is the influence behind a racist system. And as much as we like to believe and say and, protest about, when we put words to our protest, we say this, and I think we truly believe this. We believe that racism is still upheld mostly by the other man. You know what I'm saying? The white man, the Caucasian man. We think that that's who's really upholding it. And technically, yeah, because they still have the authority in these high positions, and it's been passed down generation after generation. They leave, places of business. They leave businesses and office positions and high-ranking positions and positions in city hall. They leave all these positions to their great-grandson and grandsons, and so they are, technically they're just keeping it upheld. But I'm talking about psychologically, it's being upheld more so by the subjugated segment of the population. And not every other segment of the population that isn't white is subjugated. They're just good at looking as if they're subjugated. But if you really look at things, they're allied with the other man or that man. And I'm not saying any of this to be against any community, whatever that community may be. I'm just looking at everything objectively, despite what you might think, and this ain't no black power nothing and fists in the air nothing. I'm just observing. And I was thinking about this, and just observing, these last few days, how certain people operate. And I'm trying to figure out what the rationality behind certain people's way of operating is. And I felt this kind of explains it in a way. I know it's probably like, damn, you thinking way too deep, kind of, probably. But I'm not trying to think too deep. I'm just trying to kind of, I guess, encapsulate is the word I'm looking for, or encompass all things that I have studied about a certain culture and our history. In the history, I'm trying to come up with a rational way of trying to understand the psychology behind some of the movements of some people, where things didn't have to go to a crazy, heightened, chaotic place, but it did because of a couple of actions, a couple of words said, a couple of inactions, it takes a few. And that's another thing I've noticed. All it takes is one instance for things to go haywire. All it takes is one person to make things chaotic, to make a scene. It takes, if you notice, if you've been in a situation like this, all it takes is one person to make a scene. You feel me? That's all it takes. Depending on the situation, it can be like a perfect storm. And all it takes is one person to disrupt the harmony of a place or a, environment. That's all it takes. You feel what I'm saying? I think for some people, and follow me down this line of thinking, this is something way, gonna be way to the left probably in your mind, but really if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. To some people, that might be their idea of control. For people who lack authority and control in the country, where everything is dictated to them, where everything is demanded of them by another, commanded of them from another authority beyond them, everything is, dictated to them. You get what I'm saying? The only way to have control is to cause chaos and harmony. That's the only way, for a fact, if you say this right now, that you can create a scene, that's a little bit of power. That's a little bit of authority. Because you can make a good situation bad. You can do that. So that's power. That's like authority, that's control. I can make this go bad if I come in here and act crazy. Yeah, I can make things go bad. That's my little, that's your little bit of power, And for people who are powerless, you look for any ways to have dominance. You look for any way. The subtlest of ways will be an opportunity to seize control, And I'm starting to think for some people, that's the psychology behind certain actions. It's their way of control, considering all else that I said before this, self-determination, being influenced by another who doesn't see your culture as anything and want to identify with something that's strong and, something that you might believe is solid. You get what I'm saying? All that being said, the bottom line is if you don't have any type of control over your life, you're gonna look for control. You're gonna look for control in different ways. You're gonna look for different ways to seize authority. You're gonna look for different ways to dominate. You get what I'm saying? You're gonna search for different ways, to have your way, so to speak. You get what I'm saying? You're gonna search for different ways to do whatever it takes to be the one to call the shots. Whatever that means, by any means. And I'm guaranteeing that's not, well, I can't say that. Depending on the context, that, I can't say that part. But yeah, that's something to think about. Hopefully that wasn't all over the place. I was just sharing my thought. I was thinking about, like I said, agent provocateurs. If you know what that means, if you don't, look it up. But if you do, you know what I'm saying. Some people volunteer for that role these days, not even being paid to be that among people who they should be growing and building with. But if you want to be an agent of chaos, cool. Just don't refuse the consequences when chaos is given to you, So yeah, that's all I got for right now. Yeah.